He never thought his life would change because of a shared apartment. But that was exactly what happened when he agreed to take in a new roommate. He was a quiet person by nature. He liked calm evenings, simple routines, and long hours of work followed by rest. The apartment was small but comfortable, and until that point, it had been his safe space. When rising rent forced him to find someone to share the place, he didn't expect anything strange, just someone normal who would pay on time and respect boundaries. That was before she arrived. She walked in with a bright smile, quick steps, and an energy that filled the room instantly. Her friends jokingly called her a fox girl, not because she believed she was one, because she loved fox-themed accessories, playful clothes, and acting clever and mischievous. The most noticeable thing was the soft foxtail she clipped to her belt, part of her cosplay hobby. To her, it was harmless fun. To him, it was unexpected. From the first few minutes, he knew she was different. She talked a lot, laughed easily, and asked questions without waiting too long for answers. She noticed everything: how neatly he stacked his books, how quiet the apartment felt, how he paused before speaking. She teased him lightly even then, smiling as if it were a game. He tried to stay polite, telling himself it would calm down once she settled in, but it didn't. That first night, after both of them finished unpacking, the apartment felt different. The lights were low, the city noise outside was soft, and he just wanted to rest. She, however, seemed full of energy. She moved around the living room, touching decorations, commenting on small things, and making playful remarks about how serious he looked. Every time he sat down, she found a reason to speak again. She teased the way he drank his tea. She teased the way he checked the door twice before locking it. She teased how he sat straight on the couch, like he was always on alert. None of it was cruel, but it was constant. Each comment came with a smile, but the smiles never gave him a moment of peace. He tried to laugh it off. He nodded, answered politely, and hoped she would get tired. Inside, though, he felt uneasy. He wasn't used to someone pushing into his quiet world like that. He kept wondering if this was how every night would be. He didn't want to be rude, but he also didn't want to feel uncomfortable in his own home. She noticed his silence and leaned into it even more. She joked about how quiet he was. She called him mysterious and serious guy, clearly enjoying his reactions. When he looked away, she laughed. When he sighed, she smiled wider. It felt like she was testing him, seeing how far she could go without him saying anything. As the night grew later, his patience slowly wore thin. He sat on his bed, scrolling on his phone, trying to escape the noise. She sat nearby, swinging her legs, the foxtail moving slightly as she shifted. She made jokes about how he looked tired and asked if he always went to bed so early. When he answered simply, she laughed again, saying he was too easy to read. He didn't understand her fully. Part of him thought she was just excited about her new place. Another part felt like she enjoyed being in control of the situation. He wondered if she teased everyone like this, or if she had chosen him because he reacted quietly. The thought bothered him more than he wanted to admit. Still, he stayed calm. He reminded himself that this was only the first night. People needed time to adjust. Maybe tomorrow would be different. Maybe she would calm down once the excitement wore off. He told himself to be patient, to give things time. But as midnight passed, she showed no sign of slowing down. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, smiling like she had all the time in the world. She commented on how serious his face looked even when he was tired. She joked that he probably dreamed about schedules and alarms. Her tone stayed playful, but the words kept coming. He finally looked up at her and met her eyes. For a brief moment, she paused. The room grew quiet. He thought maybe she would stop. Instead, she laughed softly and said she liked seeing him flustered. She said it was interesting. That word stayed with him. Interesting. He realized then that this wasn't just random teasing. She was watching him closely, learning how he reacted, how far she could go. It made him uncomfortable, but it also made him think. He had spent years avoiding conflict, staying silent to keep peace. Now, that habit was being tested in his own home. As the night stretched on, he lay back on his bed, staring at the ceiling. Her voice continued in the background, lighter now, but still present. He listened without answering much, his thoughts drifting. He wondered what kind of roommate she would be. He wondered if he should speak up or keep enduring it. The foxtail brushed against the side of the bed as she moved, a small detail that somehow made everything feel more real. This wasn't a joke or a story. This was his life now. A quiet man and a playful girl sharing a space neither fully understood yet. Eventually, she stepped back and said she would let him sleep for now. Her tone suggested the teasing wasn't over, just paused. She walked away humming softly, leaving the room feeling strangely empty and tense at the same time. He exhaled slowly. His heart felt heavier than it should have after such a simple night. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was clear. This roommate was going to challenge him in ways he never expected. As he closed his eyes, he knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, he woke up to the sound of sunlight streaming through the curtains and the faint hum of the city outside. Normally, mornings were his favorite time. Quiet, calm, a moment to prepare for the day ahead. But this morning felt different. The energy of the previous night still lingered in the apartment, like a soft echo he couldn't ignore. The fox girl was already awake, moving around the kitchen, her presence impossible to miss even without words. She hummed a cheerful tune, opening drawers, rearranging cups, occasionally glancing at him with that playful smile that had kept him on edge all night. He got out of bed slowly, trying not to stumble over the small pile of things he had left on the floor the night before. He reminded himself to stay calm, to keep the peace, and to find the balance he hadn't yet figured out. But as soon as he entered the kitchen, she greeted him with a teasing comment about his sleepy face. She leaned against the counter, the foxtail swaying gently with her movements, and said something about how serious he looked even before he had his first sip of coffee. He forced a small smile and replied simply, "Good morning." It was the safest response he could give, but it didn't stop her. In fact, it seemed to encourage her to continue. She teased him about his morning routine, how slowly he moved, and even how he poured his coffee too carefully. Each comment was small, harmless on the surface, but their constant repetition made him feel slightly off balance. As breakfast went on, the teasing escalated. She playfully reached for his cup, pretending to spill it, and made a small joke about how careful he always was. When he tightened his grip instinctively, she laughed and said he was too tense. Every gesture, every word, felt like part of a game she had invented just for him. He began to notice a pattern. She wasn't just teasing to be mean. She was observing him, learning his habits, testing his reactions. The realization was unsettling, but also fascinating. He had never been someone who drew attention, yet here she was, focusing entirely on him. Despite the constant teasing, he tried to respond in small ways without giving her too much reaction. A slight nod here, a small chuckle there. He thought if he stayed calm, the teasing might die down eventually. But she was persistent. She seemed to enjoy every small flinch, every careful word he spoke. When he tried to make a quiet joke in return, she laughed louder than expected, clearly enjoying the playful battle. By late morning, he realized he had to leave for errands. As he grabbed his coat, she followed him to the door, still chatting and teasing about his serious face. She made little jokes about how carefully he checked the locks and how he always carried extra keys. Even as he stepped outside, her energy lingered like a shadow. For the first time, he felt like the apartment wasn't entirely his anymore. During the day, he replayed the night's events in his mind. He thought about how unusual it was to share space with someone so lively. Someone who seemed to know instinctively how to push buttons without being cruel. Her energy had been exhausting, but oddly engaging. He admitted to himself that, as much as he wanted quiet, he also felt a strange curiosity about her. Who was she really? Why did she act this way? The questions refused to leave his mind. When he returned in the evening, the apartment already smelled of dinner. She had been busy in the kitchen again, preparing something simple and humming as she worked. The foxtail was clipped to her side as usual, bouncing slightly as she moved. She immediately noticed him and launched into more teasing. She asked if he had been thinking about her while he was out, joking about how serious he looked in public. He tried to keep his face neutral, but she laughed anyway, saying he looked too composed to be fun. He decided to try a new tactic. Instead of remaining silent or offering small responses, he attempted to joke back. It was awkward at first, words stumbling out clumsily, but she reacted with surprise. Her eyebrows raised, and for a moment the teasing faltered. She didn't stop, but there was a new, toneless testing, more playful curiosity. That small victory encouraged him. He realized that even small actions could change the dynamic between them. The night continued, and he noticed how unpredictable she could be. One moment she was teasing relentlessly, and the next she would pause, observing him with quiet interest. He began to anticipate her movements, noticing little patterns in how she acted. She walked with a slight bounce, the tail swaying behind her. She laughed at tiny things that didn't always make sense. Yet, despite the chaos, there was a rhythm for an unspoken connection that neither of them had acknowledged, but both were aware of. Around midnight, he sat in the living room, tired from the day but still alert. She joined him with a playful smile, carrying a small snack. She plopped down across from him and started teasing again, this time about his attempt to joke earlier. He realized that her teasing wasn't meant to hurt. It was her way of engaging, of connecting. He began to see the charm in it, even when it was frustrating. At some point, she paused mid-sentence, noticing his quiet observation. "You're thinking a lot tonight," she said. Her tone wasn't teasing this time, it was curious. That small shift caught him off guard. He realized that all her energy and teasing had a pattern. She wanted interaction, engagement, connection, and she used playfulness to get it. By the end of the night, he felt exhausted, but also strangely alive. The teasing had pushed him to respond in ways he hadn't before. He had learned to observe, to anticipate, and even to stand up subtly without confrontation. The dynamic between them was shifting slowly, forming a new kind of understanding. As he lay down to sleep, he thought about the unusual energy of the fox girl. She was unpredictable, relentless, and exhausting, yet her presence made the apartment feel alive in a way it never had before. He wondered how many more nights like this would come, whether he was ready for the constant challenge and subtle lessons her teasing brought. That night, he realized something important. The teasing wasn't a threat, it was an invitation. It was a test of patience, of reaction, and of connection. And deep down, he felt a quiet excitement for the next encounter. Knowing that tomorrow the teasing would continue and he would need to respond again, better and braver. Little did he know, the fox girl had more tricks up her sleeve, and the night was only the beginning of a playful, unpredictable journey that would test his calm, challenge his reactions, and change the way he thought about sharing his life and space with someone so vibrant. If you want, I can expand part 3 next, in the same detailed, engaging style, showing how the teasing grows and how he starts to react in small ways to stand up for himself. This part will also reach around 1,300 words and keep the story safe and interesting. Do you want me to do that? The following night felt different from the previous ones. He returned home feeling a mix of exhaustion from the day and curiosity about how the evening would unfold. The apartment was quiet at first, but he knew better than to assume the calm would last. The fox girl had already made herself comfortable, lounging on the couch with her legs tucked underneath her, tail flicking playfully as she hummed a tune. She looked up at him and smiled, a mischievous, knowing smile that immediately reminded him of her teasing energy. As soon as he stepped inside, she began her playful commentary. "You look like you've been thinking too hard all day," she said, tilting her head. Her tone was light, but there was a spark in her eyes that hinted she wanted to provoke a reaction. He smiled faintly and replied, "Maybe a little, trying to appear relaxed." But as always, she didn't let him off that easily. She teased him about how he walked into the room as if he were carrying the weight of the world. She joked about how his serious face could scare imaginary monsters away. At first, he tried the same calm approach he had used before, small nods, polite words, and careful restraint. But she was relentless. Every movement he made seemed to invite a new playful comment. She shifted on the couch, the foxtail swaying behind her, and made a dramatic gesture, pretending to be a wise fox inspecting its territory. "Ah, look at him," she said with mock admiration. The serious human guarding his lair. So intimidating. Her laughter filled the room, echoing off the walls. For a moment, he felt a flicker of irritation. He was used to quiet evenings and gentle routines, not a roommate who seemed determined to disrupt every habit and thought. Yet beneath the mild annoyance, he noticed something else. The teasing wasn't mean. She didn't mock him in a harmful way. She was playful, energetic, and fully engaged in the interaction. It was her style, and if he wanted to coexist peacefully, he would have to find a new strategy. He decided to try responding in a slightly bolder way. She joked about his intimidating, serious face. He countered with a small smile and said, "Maybe I just like to stay mysterious." She raised her eyebrows, clearly surprised that he had responded with more than a polite nod. "Mysterious?" she echoed, tilting her head in curiosity. "I like that, but you can't hide forever, you know. I'll find ways to crack that serious shell of yours." Energy seemed to spike at his response. The teasing became more animated, more unpredictable. She moved closer, reaching for the small stack of books on the table, and jokingly warned him not to guard them so seriously. He chuckled quietly, realizing that his attempts to stay calm and composed were no longer enough to keep up with her. He had to engage, think on his feet, and, most importantly, set subtle boundaries without dampening her playful spirit. As the night progressed, the teasing grew more interactive. She made up small games, asking him to guess which drawer held certain items, or to identify sounds she made from different parts of the apartment. Every time he guessed wrong, she laughed and swished her tail in playful triumph. Every correct guess earned a small, teasing smirk from her. He began to feel the rhythm of her playfulness, learning to anticipate her movements and responses. It was exhausting but strangely enjoyable in a way he hadn't expected. At one point, she moved behind the couch and pretended to sneak up on him, flicking the tip of her tail near his shoulder. He jumped slightly, and she erupted into laughter, pointing at him dramatically. Finally, a reaction. "You're not completely unamused after all." She circled him like a fox inspecting prey, though her tone remained light and humorous. He couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it, realizing that the night had become a kind of dance, a playful battle of wits and reactions. Then came the moment that would change the dynamic entirely. She turned her back to him for a brief second, reaching for a small stack of papers on the table. Acting on impulse, he reached out and gently grabbed the tip of her foxtail. It was a small, sudden action, more instinct than plan. The effect was immediate. She froze mid-motion, the tail still in his hand, and slowly turned around. Her eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed slightly as she processed what had happened. For a moment, the room was silent. The playful energy seemed to pause, replaced by a curious tension neither of them had felt before. He didn't pull aggressively or hold on too long. It was a simple, controlled gesture that, for the first time, shifted the balance between them. She studied him for a few seconds, her tail twitching as if unsure how to react. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed on a loud, mocking laugh, but a soft, surprised one. "You grabbed my tail," she said, trying to sound calm but failing. "I did not see that coming." Her reaction was a turning point. The teasing didn't stop, but it changed tone. She no longer approached him with the same relentless testing. Instead, there was a spark of respect in her eyes. He realized that she hadn't expected him to take action, even in such a playful way. It was a subtle shift, but it made him feel more confident and more capable of engaging with her. On his terms, from that moment, the teasing evolved. She continued to joke, but she also began observing him with a new level of curiosity and acknowledgement. She asked questions about his day, genuinely listened to his responses, and even complimented him on his sense of humor when he made small jokes. The energy between them became more balanced, a mix of playful interaction and mutual respect. He noticed that he felt lighter, freer, and more engaged than before. The initial exhaustion from her constant teasing transformed into a kind of alertness and excitement. He was no longer just a passive participant. He was actively shaping the interaction, testing boundaries, and responding creatively. The fox girl, for her part, seemed intrigued by this change. Her movements were still lively, her laughter still frequent. But there was a new rhythm to their dynamic. As the night continued, they found small ways to enjoy the playful tension. She dared him to mimic a fox's movements, and he obliged with exaggerated motions, causing her to laugh uncontrollably. He teased her back about the tail's exaggerated sway, and she responded with mock indignation, spinning around and pretending to chase him. The apartment felt alive in a way he had never experienced, filled with laughter, small competitions, and shared energy. By the time the clock neared midnight, he felt a sense of accomplishment. He had survived the teasing, engaged with it creatively, and even gained a small measure of control. The fox girl, for her part, seemed to appreciate his responses, nodding subtly and smiling in a way that suggested a new level of mutual understanding. It wasn't a confrontation or a victory, it was a new balance, one that allowed both of them to coexist and interact in a playful, engaging way. Finally, she settled back on the couch, still flicking her tail slightly, but with a calmer demeanor. "You're more interesting than I thought," she said softly, her voice carrying a hint of genuine admiration. He smiled quietly, realizing that the night's events had created a bridge between them, a connection built on playfulness, reaction, and understanding. He lay in bed later, reflecting on the evening. The teasing had escalated, yes, but it had also opened a door to new ways of interacting. He felt a growing sense of curiosity about her, about how much further the playful energy could go, and about what lessons he might learn from this unusual roommate dynamic. The fox girl had tested him, and he had responded. That simple act of grabbing her tail had changed something fundamental. He was no longer just reacting. He was participating, and in that participation he found a strange joy. The fox girl's teasing was no longer just an obstacle, it was an invitation to engage, to laugh, to respond, and to explore a new form of friendship and connection. As he drifted to sleep, he knew that this night was only the beginning of a journey filled with playful challenges, laughter, and unexpected discoveries about both of them. The following night, the apartment felt different. He returned home tired from a long day, expecting the usual energy from the fox girl. But tonight there was a noticeable shift. She greeted him at the door with a soft smile, the foxtail swaying gently behind her. It wasn't the teasing, relentless energy from before, it was lighter, or curious, as if she were watching him with interest rather than testing him. He stepped inside, taking a deep breath. After the events of the previous night, the moment he had grabbed her tail, the dynamic had subtly changed. She no longer approached him as someone to tease endlessly. There was a new awareness in her gestures and expressions. She moved around the room, organizing a few things, humming softly. But she glanced at him frequently, her eyes filled with quiet curiosity. "Hey," she said, tilting her head. "You seem different tonight." Her tone was playful, but gentle. He smiled faintly, unsure how to respond. He realized that she had noticed a shift in him, perhaps because he had finally shown a small measure of confidence. For the first time, he felt that he could engage with her on more equal terms. As the evening progressed, the teasing began again, but in a more controlled way. She would make light jokes about small things, how he poured his drink, how he organized his papers, but they no longer felt overwhelming. He found himself responding more quickly, offering small, playful comments back. When she said something about his serious human face, he countered. "Well, someone has to balance your fox energy." She laughed. A genuine, warm laugh, and nodded approvingly. The room slowly filled with a different kind of energy. Instead of the constant push and pull of teasing and defense, there was a rhythm forming between them. She would tease, he would respond, and the cycle became almost like a game. Each small exchange built understanding. He noticed that she seemed to respect his reactions, giving him space when he needed it and stepping forward when she sensed he was ready at one point. She plopped down on the couch across from him, tail flicking lazily. "You've changed," she said softly, almost thoughtfully. "You're more confident, more alive." "I didn't expect that." Paused before answering. "I guess I've just learned how to deal with your energy," he said with a small smile. She laughed, not mockingly this time, but genuinely, and leaned back.
Yes.
As if satisfied with his answer, they began to talk more openly. She shared stories from her past, how she had always loved playful challenges, why she enjoyed teasing those she felt connected to. He listened, occasionally asking questions. Learning that her mischievous nature wasn't about control or dominance, it was her way of forming bonds and testing compatibility with people she liked. He realized that her energy, which had felt overwhelming at first, was really a sign of trust and openness. He shared a little of his own experiences, speaking about his quiet life, his routines, and why he preferred calm and order. She listened attentively, nodding and asking thoughtful questions. The teasing didn't disappear, but it shifted. It became a tool for connection rather than conflict. She would playfully interrupt his stories, exaggerate small gestures, and joke about minor details, but always with an underlying warmth that made him laugh rather than feel annoyed. As the night went on, he noticed subtle changes in her behavior. She moved closer when sharing stories, tilted her head when listening, and even offered small gestures of care, making him a cup of tea or adjusting the blanket on the couch. These actions were small, but they spoke volumes. He realized that the playful energy that had exhausted him before was now a bridge, allowing them to connect in ways words alone could not. The moment that defined the evening came, when they both found themselves sitting on the floor, organizing books and small items from a recent delivery. She reached for a book and accidentally knocked over a small cup. He instinctively caught it before it spilled. She looked at him, eyes wide, and laughed softly. "See? I knew you could be quick," she said, gently teasing again. He smiled, realizing that their interactions had grown more cooperative. Instead of reacting defensively, they now worked together, blending playfulness with teamwork. Later, she leaned back against the couch, observing him quietly. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "I didn't expect you to handle last night so well. Most people just freeze or get annoyed." "You," responded. He felt a small rush of pride, not arrogance, but satisfaction. "I guess I had too," he said simply. "You don't exactly give people room to just watch quietly." She laughed, her eyes sparkling. The night continued with a mix of playful exchanges and genuine conversation. They shared small personal stories, memories from childhood, and even little worries from their daily lives. She teased him gently about small habits, how he always lined things up perfectly, how he hummed softly when focused, but the teasing was now balanced with respect and genuine interest. It was no longer about control. It was about connection. He noticed how much he had changed in just a few nights. The constant teasing had forced him out of his comfort zone. He had learned to respond, to anticipate, and to engage without losing himself. And she, in turn, had adjusted her approach, recognizing that her playful energy needed to be met with patience and engagement. They were learning each other's rhythms, forming a mutual understanding that went beyond words. By midnight, the atmosphere in the apartment was calm, but filled with a quiet energy. They sat across from each other, laughing softly over small jokes and sharing quiet observations about their day. The foxtail swayed gently as she leaned back, and he felt a sense of connection he had not experienced before. It was a rare balance of playfulness and trust, of energy and calm, of teasing and understanding. As they prepared for bed, she glanced at him and said softly, "I like this. Us, tonight. It feels different, better." He nodded, a quiet smile forming. He understood what she meant. The playful energy that had once overwhelmed him had transformed into a bridge of connection. They had navigated the teasing, found balance, and discovered a new way to interact that was engaging, safe, and mutually respectful. He lay in bed that night reflecting on the changes. The Fox girl's teasing had not vanished, but it had evolved into something richer, deeper, and more meaningful. He had learned to stand up in small ways, to respond thoughtfully, and to engage without fear. She had learned to respect his boundaries, to adjust her playful energy, and to connect through laughter rather than constant challenge in that quiet moment before sleep. He realized that this night marked a turning point. The teasing had led to understanding, the playful energy had led to connection, and the unexpected moments, the small gestures, the shared laughter, the subtle shifts had created a foundation for a new relationship. Not just as roommates, but as two people learning to navigate energy, personality, and interaction with care, respect, enjoy the fox girl's playful presence. Once overwhelming, had become a source of engagement, warmth, and connection. And for him, the realization that he could meet her energy with confidence, humor, and understanding was empowering. Tomorrow, they would continue their playful dance. But tonight, they'd found a moment of balance, a moment of respect, and a moment of mutual curiosity. He drifted off to sleep that night with a sense of quiet satisfaction. The teasing, the energy, the playful tension they had all led to growth, understanding, and connection. And he knew that this was only the beginning of their journey together, filled with laughter, unexpected challenges, and the slow building of trust and companionship. That morning, he woke to the familiar sound of sunlight spilling through the curtains, but this time it felt different. The apartment seemed lighter, warmer, and somehow more welcoming. The fox girl was already moving around, humming softly, her tail swaying gently as she adjusted the cushions on the couch. Unlike the first nights, her energy was playful, but not overwhelming. There was a rhythm to her movements, a balance between mischief and calm, as if the apartment itself had adjusted to the new dynamic they had slowly built together. He stretched, feeling a sense of quiet satisfaction. The past nights had been full of challenges, laughter, and unexpected moments, and now he sensed that something had shifted. He got out of bed and made his way to the kitchen, careful not to make too much noise, but also curious about how she would greet him. She looked up, smiled softly, and said, "Good morning. Ready for another day of surviving me?" Her tone was teasing, but it carried warmth rather than challenge. He smiled faintly, replying, "I think I can manage." The exchange felt comfortable, natural, unlike the awkwardness of their first interactions. The fox girl laughed lightly, flicking her tail playfully, and for the first time. He felt that their playful energy had settled into something cooperative and enjoyable. They moved around the kitchen together, preparing breakfast without words most of the time, yet communicating through small gestures, glances, and subtle teasing. During breakfast, their conversation flowed easily. She shared small stories from her past, things that were funny, slightly embarrassing, or just curious tidbits about her life. He listened attentively, asking questions, and sometimes teasing her gently in return. The teasing no longer felt like a test or a challenge. It was a way to engage, to connect, and to enjoy each other's company. He realized that the playful energy she had brought into the apartment was not something to endure, it was something to participate in. Something to balance with patience, humor, and understanding. After breakfast, they settled into their respective routines for a few hours. He worked quietly at his desk while she organized her belongings, occasionally glancing up to comment on something amusing he did or said. Their interactions were light, brief, but meaningful, filled with small moments of shared attention. Even when she teased him, it was now with an underlying respect, as if she recognized his boundaries and appreciated his responses. Later in the afternoon, a playful mood returned. She approached him with a mischievous grin, holding a small object in her hand. "Think you can guess what this is without looking?" she asked, holding it behind her back. He hesitated briefly, then smiled. "I'll give it a try," he said. The game that followed was filled with laughter, mock frustration, and small victories on both sides. Each joke and playful challenge reinforced the bond they had been building. As evening approached, the apartment felt full of life. They moved around together, exchanging playful remarks, teasing one another gently, and laughing at small accidents and surprises. The fox girl's energy was still present, but it had become balanced with his calmness and subtle humor. The dynamic between them was no longer one of constant testing. It was now a mutual understanding, a rhythm that allowed both of them to enjoy their time together without conflict or discomfort. At one point, they sat on the floor together, sorting through a pile of books and small items that had accumulated over the week. She nudged a book toward him with her foot, laughing softly. "Try not to make it too serious, okay?" she said, flicking her tail playfully. He responded by pretending to inspect the book with exaggerated care, making her laugh uncontrollably. The simple, silly interaction felt like a victory, a sign that they had learned to play together without the stress or tension of the earlier nights. As night fell, they settled into the living room with soft lighting and calm music. The fox girl leaned back against the couch, tail swaying lazily while he sat nearby, feeling a sense of ease he had never experienced in the apartment before. She looked at him and said softly, "I like this. I like how things are now. It feels easy." He nodded, smiling. "I like it too. It's comfortable." For the first time, their words matched the comfort of their shared space and the balance of their playful energy. They continued to talk quietly, sharing thoughts, small observations, and stories from their days. She teased him lightly about minor habits, how he always lined objects neatly. He hummed softly when thinking, but the teasing was gentle, considerate, and accompanied by laughter rather than pressure. He responded with playful comments of his own, enjoying the freedom to engage without fear or stress. The room felt warm, safe, and alive with a new kind of connection. At some point, she glanced at him with a soft smile. "You've changed too," she said. "You're more confident, more yourself. I can see it." He felt a small rush of pride and satisfaction. The past nights had been full of challenges and moments of uncertainty, but now they had reached a place where both of them could be themselves. Engage fully and enjoy each other's company. "I think we've both learned a lot," he replied quietly. "About each other and about ourselves." She nodded, her tail flicking gently in agreement. The rest of the night passed in a mix of quiet companionship and gentle playfulness. They laughed over small jokes, shared stories, and even enjoyed moments of comfortable silence. The fox girl's energy was present, lively but balanced, and he found himself appreciating her presence in a way he had never imagined. The teasing that had once felt overwhelming had transformed into a form of connection, a way to communicate and engage that was both fun and meaningful. Before bed, they tidied up the apartment together. She reached for a small blanket and handed it to him with a soft smile. "For you," she said gently. "You deserve it after all the effort keeping up with me." He chuckled quietly, accepting it with gratitude. The gesture, small as it was, symbolized the mutual respect and understanding that had grown between them over the past few nights. It was no longer just playful energy, it was a true bond of shared experience, trust, and care. As they finally prepared for sleep, he reflected on the journey of the past week. The fox girl had arrived with energy that had seemed overwhelming at first, pushing his patience, testing his boundaries, and challenging his calm nature. Yet, through playful interaction, small acts of confidence, and moments of mutual understanding, they had reached a balance. Their teasing had evolved into a form of connection, their laughter into shared joy, and their small gestures into mutual respect. He realized that this journey had taught him more than just how to handle a lively roommate. It had taught him about engagement, patience, confidence, and the power of playful connection. She had taught him to respond without fear, to embrace energy rather than resist it, and to find joy in unexpected challenges. And he had taught her that teasing could be met with confidence, humor, and thoughtful responses, creating a partnership rather than a contest. Finally, as the lights went dim and the apartment grew quiet, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The fox girl's presence, once overwhelming and unpredictable, had become a source of comfort, joy, and engagement. They had found a rhythm together, a balance between playful energy and calm, teasing and understanding, laughter and quiet reflection. It was a bond built slowly, night by night, challenge by challenge. Moment by moment, he lay down, listening to the faint hum of the city outside and the soft sound of her movements as she settled into her side of the apartment. He smiled quietly to himself, feeling the satisfaction of a connection that had grown from playful teasing into something meaningful. The journey had not been easy, but it had been worth it. Together, they had created a space of laughter, trust, and mutual respect, an apartment that no longer felt like just a shared space, but like a home filled with warmth, understanding, and unexpected friendship. As sleep finally took him, he thought about the nights to come, knowing that playful energy, laughter, and teasing would continue, but now it would be different. It would be balanced, engaging, and full of connection. And in that thought, he felt a quiet excitement, knowing that this was only the beginning of a journey filled with companionship, laughter, and the joy of shared experiences with someone who had become more than just a roommate.